Anybody who's in a couple is probably well aware that there's conflict all the time. Small bits, big bits, but like there's always, it's impossible to get through a relationship without conflict being a regular part of that. So being mindful that there is a way to get through that without it tearing us apart or being a weight on the relationship. I tell my clients that anger is not something against the relationship. It's something that you do within the context of the relationship, so long as you do it well. Obviously, if you're yelling and screaming and throwing things and putting people down, that's not good on the relationship. But my feeling angry at you or disappointed or whatever negative feelings might come up because of something that we did wrong, some disconnect in the relationship, that is not a strike against the relationship. That is just part of the relationship that needs to be done well. And then it can be part of a growing, wonderful, thriving relationship. It's interesting that you bring that up. I talk exactly about this question in the book. I don't have research on it. I don't know that research has been done on go-to-bed angriers and non-angrier go-to-bedders. I'm skeptical that ever worked. I think it's a nice ideal, but if you're angry at somebody, then you're angry. I mean, Jewish tradition does have a comment about this. It says, do not try to appease somebody in their time of anger. I'll say that in the Gemara. Meaning, if I'm angry at you, that's just not the time to deal with it. And if it happens to be before bed, that's unfortunate. But everybody I've ever asked about this, who has gotten that advice or tried it, has agreed with me that it doesn't seem to work. Because what happens if it's midnight and you got into a fight and you say, well, you got to figure this out before we go to bed? So what actually happens is that now it's 3:00 in the morning and you're still angry at each other and you're dead tired to boot. I don't know if you've got that experience, but nobody that I brought this up to has ever disagreed with me and said, no, actually, yeah, we decide to calm ourselves down and we talk for a few minutes and we feel much better and we go to bed. Like, I don't think that's a really normal human reaction. And I count myself in that. If I'm mad at my wife about something, I can't do it well in that moment. So yes, sometimes we go to bed angry, but in the context of a loving relationship, that's not the end of the world. Like, okay, so we'll talk about it tomorrow. That's okay. If you're looking to be right, it's going to be a lonely journey. Being right does not make relationships better. Being right is a nice consolation prize instead of having what you're actually looking for, which is a relationship, a connection, a partnership. We're not here trying to run a company where you need a certain amount of data to make a decision. I mean, obviously, you need facts to make decisions, but in a marriage, you're trying to be together. You're trying to be in a relationship. You're trying to have a connection and empathy and togetherness, and seeking out who's right is exactly the opposite direction. And people who fight to figure out who's right, they have these fights that are unpleasant and they get through them, and maybe someone will be right or maybe not. But it certainly does not build or improve the relationship. And it doesn't solve arguments either. I talked about this time I was working with a couple and they got into this kind of argument about who said what when and did they, didn't they? And I pointed out how it really doesn't matter who's right if you want to make things better. And they kind of looked at me with this knowing glance. They explained they actually have their house rigged up with like cameras and security cameras and stuff. And so they were able on this occasion to go back and look at who said what. And then it turned out that like she was right, that she had said it. And he goes, well, yeah, but it's the way you said it. Right. So it just doesn't help to be right. It does not make the problem go away, and it does not make the relationship better. So I am very adamant with people I'm trying to help that we let go of who's right and try to make things better. If you think that there's a competition here about who's going to be right and who's going to be the winner and the loser, then you're forced to argue so you're not the loser.
Right.
But we have to change the dynamic in a couple from who's the winner and who's the loser to, hey, let's figure this out together. There were a couple of flawed assumptions there in your question that if I just let it go, then maybe it'll this, that, the other. I'm not suggesting letting it go. If we should talk about that. I just don't think we should talk about it in terms of, well, let's figure out who was right, and then we can decide what to do. I don't think that's going to get to a better place. I got to do this right now. This feeling like, oh, we have to solve this right now. We can't go to bed until we solve this. We have to talk about it right now. It doesn't really work. If one or both of us is so ramped up that it's going to go badly, it's going to go badly. And so helping people just manage the frustration and the anxiety of Okay, we're not going to do it now. We'll talk about it later. It helps how to talk about it. You know how to have a difficult conversation, then you feel more confident that later we'll do that. If you don't know how to talk about it, so what's going to happen, which happens for a lot of people, is if we drop it now, we'll never talk about it. And that's very distressing. So giving people the tools to have a good conversation, even when it's hard, allows us to take a break and come back to it later, which is far more effective. Because I don't know anybody who does this well when they're really ramped up emotionally. Yeah, fights are part of a relationship. Hitting each other is not part of a relationship. Calling each other nasty names may not be part of a relationship, but stepping on each other's toes sometimes, that's part of a relationship. Yeah. It might have been different in past times. I mean, until recently, or relatively recently in human history, marriage was a lot more about convenience and social connection and reproduction than it is today. So it might have been different in the past. But today, when we're trying to make partnerships and friendships and all these things out of a marriage, yeah, fights are going to happen because that's what happens in intimate relationships. I mean, I'm less concerned with the lexical nature of this word and that word, and people argue, and it means that here's how I'm using it. And someone who wants to go and argue with me that I'm doing it wrong, you're welcome to find my contact information and shoot me an email. Empathy.
Yeah, don't fight with me about it.
No, fight with me. It's fine. Empathy, the way I'm using it, just means if you're feeling it, I'm feeling it. You know, I try to understand what you're going through. I tell spouses when they're trying to communicate that to each other, it's not enough just to identify, oh, well, I guess you're angry about that. But it's like if you are in this nasty cave that's full of critters and you're uncomfortable, sad, depressed, angry, whatever it is, you got to get in the cave with them, right? If I am glib about whatever's going on for you, like, oh, wow, yep, tough day at work, sorry to hear that, pass the salt, that's not empathy. Empathy means like, wow, tough day at work. Well, yeah, tell me about that. Well, I get in there with you. And if my tone and my body language and my voice start to match where you're at, now we're in sync. So empathy literally, from the Greek roots or whatever, means feeling with or feeling in. It's when we sync up our feelings. And I really get deeply what's going on for you and where you're at. And to feel understood on that level has a big impact on being able to communicate, to relate, and to be together. Getting in the pit doesn't mean that you let go of your lifeline and get waist deep in the quicksand. And then also, you can walk out of the cave. Let's say somebody has depression mamish and they're stuck and they cannot lift their mood at this moment. That doesn't mean that you abandon your head and get yourself stuck as well. I mean, that's not the way to save somebody anyways. Right? You don't jump in the water to save somebody and let go of the lifeline.
Right.
Hop out of there, even if they can't. It doesn't mean that you stay there forever because they're there. It means you come in and you offer empathy and I'm here for you. But now I'm going to walk out. I'm going to go have dinner and I hope you come with me. But if you're not ready to, that's okay also. It just means that I can get there with you. It doesn't mean I'm stuck or I am in the same stuck situation that you're in. I mean, we are all self-centered by nature. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I just mean that the way you see the world is through your own eyes. That the process of maturing in one way can be defined as the process of getting out of that rigid perspective and being able to recognize that there are other perspectives, right? A child cannot do that. A child will be talking on the phone and answer a question by nodding their head because they just don't get that the other person can't see them. Because like, I can see me, I'm here, so why can't, but they just don't get it. We have adults doing similar things by insisting like, oh, but the water's not so cold, just come in. Oh, maybe to the other person it is cold. Or, here, taste this, it's delicious. Well, I don't really like that food. There are different people with different emotions and different preferences, and we are all so different in such fundamental ways that often we just don't even realize that we are different in those ways, and I can't even conceive of that. And so it really takes a process of maturing and adulting and thinking through this and recognizing, okay, people are different and they don't have to be like me, and I'm not wrong for being like me either. That most problems don't get resolved right away. Certainly not the important ones. And this for sure is something I learned from Rabbi Orluek, which is that the big problems in life do not get solved right away. For those people who have children, you can be sure of that, right? A kid has an anxiety problem or an aggression problem or whatever it is. It ain't going to be one lecture, sit down and then we're good. this is going to be a long-term problem. Now, and if you and your spouse disagree on how much time to spend with your parents, or how to handle the kids, or a religious issue, whatever, like these are not like, okay, let's sit down and hash this out. It's a series of conversations, and it is an extended period of work where you get, over time, maybe you align more, but maybe you don't, and you learn to live with the difference. And that can be difficult, but this eye on the prize type of perspective where, okay, we got to solve this, and we got to solve it now, does not lead to better outcomes. Absolutely, that's the natural reaction, but that isn't realistic. Of course, we want to get rid of a problem as soon as possible, but a big problem does not go away just because you want it to go away.
Right.
Let's prove everything, right? I mean, imagine somebody had some medical disease, disorder, whatever it is, and they say, like, I really got to figure out how to. It's not an instant thing. Like, you may have to adjust your life over a long period to living in a new way because of some disability, and that's a difficult thing. But when it comes to important, big issues, the reality is they don't get solved instantly. And that is hard to deal with. So both of the people being on board with this and recognizing this is important. And yeah, sure, you can say that out loud, but just recognizing again, as we become adults, that the real challenges in life don't go away overnight, so they don't have instant solutions. And for us to recognize that together will be helpful. And when we recognize that, okay, we have this ongoing problem, which is that your family member X is causing a lot of trouble in our marriage. There is no immediate solution to this. Let's make sure we stay in touch about this. We keep talking about it. We're working together. And even if we don't come up with a solution today or tomorrow or next week, that we're still working on it together. We have an open channel of communication that if there's a problem or an issue, we'll keep talking about it. And if we can both be on the same page, then of course it's uncomfortable that we don't have a solution. But the fact that we wish we had a solution sooner does not make a solution appear sooner. Conflict definitely is a growthful part of a relationship. I think the first thing is that we have to drop the weapons, meaning if it's about winning and we can get as nasty as we want and there's name calling and put downs and violence, that is not the kind of conflict that leads to growth. But I can be angry at you and I can say so, and we can disagree strongly about what the correct course of action is. And if we are talking about it effectively, politely, lovingly, even I can be angry at somebody I love. But if we're talking about it in ways that are productive and respectful, even as they are full of emotion, then that leads to better places.